She's 72 years old with a broken hip. Let's be realistic, she's never going to be independent again. We put her in Shady Pines, sell the house, and split the money 3 ways. It's the practical decision. My daughter Monica's voice drifted through the crack in the hospital door, cold and clinical, as if she were discussing the disposal of an old refrigerator rather than the fate of her own mother. I lay perfectly still in my bed, heart monitor beeping steadily, pretending to be asleep, while tears leaked silently from the corners of my eyes. What Monica didn't know, what none of my children knew, was that I had spent the morning on the phone with my attorney, and the house they were so eager to sell no longer belonged to me at all. My name is Eleanor Ellie Blackwood, and this is the story of how a broken hip revealed the broken hearts of the children I had sacrificed everything for. I need to take you back 60 years, to a small farm in rural Wisconsin where a young girl learned that love and labor are often the same thing. I grew up poor. Not the romantic kind of poor you see in movies, where families gather around a humble table and count their blessings. Real poor. The kind where you go to bed hungry, where your shoes have cardboard stuffed in the soles because you can't afford new ones, where your parents work themselves into early graves just to keep a roof over your head. My father, Samuel, died when I was 15. Heart attack in the fields, brought on by decades of backbreaking work and not enough food. My mother, Ruth, followed him 3 years later, worn out by grief and exhaustion. I was left alone at 18 with nothing but the clothes on my back and a determination to never let poverty define my life again. I worked my way through secretarial school, typing until my fingers bled, taking every overtime shift I could find. I saved every penny, lived on rice and beans, wore the same 3 outfits for years. By the time I was 25, I had enough for a down payment on a small house in Madison. That house was my cathedral, my proof that hard work and sacrifice could overcome any obstacle. I painted every room myself, planted every flower in the garden, scrubbed every floor until it gleamed. It wasn't much, but it was mine. Then I met Harold Blackwood. Harold was a carpenter, a quiet man with strong hands and a gentle heart. He saw past my second-hand clothes and work-roughened hands to the woman underneath. He courted me with patience and respect, never pushing, never demanding, just consistently showing up with flowers from his mother's garden and sandwiches he'd packed for our lunch dates in the park. We married when I was 27. He moved into my little house, and together we transformed it into a home. Harold built additions with his own hands as our family grew. First a nursery, then a second bedroom, then a playroom. We had 3 children over the next 6 years. Monica, then David, then sweet little Pamela. Those were golden years. Tight, yes. Money was always a concern. But we were happy. Harold and I worked opposite shifts, so one of us could always be with the children. I took a job as an office manager at a manufacturing company, working my way up over 2 decades until I was running the entire administrative department. Harold built his carpentry business from a one-man operation to a respected local company. We never took vacations. We never bought new cars. Every spare dollar went into savings, into the children's college funds, into expanding and improving the house that had started as my tiny sanctuary and had grown into a family estate worth nearly $1 million. The children, I thought, understood the value of sacrifice. They watched us work, watched us save, watched us build something from nothing. I thought they had learned the lessons we tried to teach them. I was wrong. The first crack appeared when Monica was in college. She had chosen to attend a private university despite having a full scholarship offer from the state school. Harold and I had agreed to help with the difference, dipping into our retirement savings to cover the gap. But Monica always wanted more. Designer clothes to fit in with her wealthy classmates, spring break trips to Cancun, a new car because her used Honda was embarrassing. "Everyone else has these things," she would say. "Do you want me to be the poor kid? Do you want me to be humiliated?" I remembered being the poor kid. I remembered the humiliation. So I gave in, again and again, telling myself it was different for her generation, that I didn't want her to suffer the way I had suffered. Harold warned me. "You're teaching her to expect things she hasn't earned," he said one night after writing another check for Monica's sorority dues. "That's not love, Ellie. That's enabling." She's our daughter. She'll understand someday.
He shook his head sadly.
I hope you're right, but I fear you're not. David was different, or so I thought. He was quieter, more serious, seemingly more grateful for what we provided. He went to the state university, got a degree in business, and landed a good job at a consulting firm. He married a nice woman named Sandra, had 2 children, and seemed to be building a responsible life. But David had inherited my fear of poverty without inheriting my work ethic. He lived beyond his means, always chasing the appearance of success rather than the substance of it. He leased luxury cars he couldn't afford, bought a house in a neighborhood that stretched his budget to breaking point, sent his children to private schools that required constant financial juggling. And when the juggling failed, he came to us. It's just a bridge loan, he would say. I'll pay you back when my bonus comes through. But the bonus never seemed to be enough, and the loans were never repaid, and Harold and I watched our retirement savings dwindle as we bailed out our son again and again. Pamela, our youngest, was the one who gave me hope. Unlike her siblings, Pamela never asked for anything. She worked part-time jobs through high school and college, graduated debt-free from a community college nursing program, and built a career helping others. She married a kind man named Roberto who worked as a mechanic, and they lived modestly in a small apartment, saving for a future they were building together. Pamela called every Sunday. She visited every month, not to ask for money, but just to spend time with us. She helped Harold in the garden and helped me in the kitchen, and when she left, she always said, "Thank you for everything you've done for me. I love you, Mom." Those 3 words, "I love you," were ones I rarely heard from Monica or David anymore, unless they were followed by a request. Harold died 4 years ago. Stroke. One moment, he was pruning his roses. The next, he was gone. I found him lying in the garden he had loved so much, his face peaceful, his work gloves still on his hands. The funeral was beautiful. The children all came, all said the right things, all shed what appeared to be genuine tears. But within a week of the burial, Monica and David started asking about the will. "Dad's share of the house goes to you, right?" David asked over the phone, his voice carefully casual. "And then when eventually it gets split between us 3? I hung up without answering. Monica was more direct. She showed up at the house with a real estate agent in tow, uninvited, just to get a sense of the market value. "Mom, this house is way too big for you alone," she said while the agent measured rooms and took photos. "A lovely retirement community would be so much better. You'd have friends your own age, activities, people to take care of you." "I don't need people to take care of me. I'm 68 years old, not 90. "Of course not. I'm just saying for the future. It's something to think about." I threw the real estate agent out of my house and told Monica to leave with her. She acted shocked, hurt, as if she couldn't possibly understand why I was upset. "I'm just trying to help," she said, her voice dripping with wounded innocence. "You don't have to be so hostile." That was the word she used. Hostile. As if I were the one who had invaded her home, calculated the value of her possessions, suggested she be shipped off to a facility to wait for death. After that, I started paying attention. I noticed how Monica's calls came more frequently around tax time, when she needed documentation of the loans we had given her that she wanted to write off. I noticed how David's visits always coincided with financial emergencies, a car repair, a medical bill, a temporary cash flow problem that required immediate assistance. I noticed how neither of them asked how I was doing, how I was coping with the loss of Harold, my partner of 43 years, how I was managing alone in the house we had built together. Only Pamela seemed to care about me as a person rather than a source of funds. Only Pamela showed up without an agenda, without a request, without calculating eyes that swept over my possessions like an inventory sheet. I started keeping records. Every loan I had made, every check I had written, every time Monica or David had taken money with promises to repay that were never fulfilled. The total was staggering. Over the years, I had given them nearly $400,000, money that should have been my retirement security, money that Harold and I had worked our entire lives to save. And what had I gotten in return? Phone calls only when they needed something. Visits that felt like audits. The constant, crushing awareness that to two of my three children, I was not a mother to be loved, but an asset to be managed. 3 months ago, I made an appointment with my attorney. His name was Gregory Walsh, a silver-haired man who had been handling my family's legal affairs for 30 years. He had drawn up our wills when the children were young, had helped us navigate the complexities of Harold's estate, and had always given me honest, thoughtful advice. "What can I do for you, Eleanor?" he asked when I sat down in his office. "I want to change my will, and I want to transfer the deed of my house." Gregory raised his eyebrows but didn't comment. He simply pulled out a legal pad and began taking notes. I explained everything. The years of financial drain, the entitled attitudes, the real estate agent incident, the growing sense that I was being viewed as an obstacle between my children and their inheritance rather than as a person worthy of love and respect. "I want to leave everything to Pamela," I said. "The house, the savings, all of it. Monica and David have already received their inheritance several times over. They just never realized it because they never intended to pay it back." Gregory nodded slowly. "That's your right, of course. But I should warn you, if Monica and David contest the will, it could get ugly. They could claim undue influence, diminished capacity, all sorts of things to try to overturn your wishes. Then let's make it ironclad. I want a full psychological evaluation on record. I want everything documented. I want there to be no question that I am of sound mind and that this decision was made deliberately, with full understanding of its implications. And the house. Transfer the deed to Pamela now. Today if possible. She can let me live here until I die, and then it's hers free and clear. No probate, no contest, no way for them to get their hands on it." Gregory smiled for the first time. "You've thought this through." "I've had 4 years to think. 4 years of watching my children show me exactly who they are. I was too blind to see it while Harold was alive. I won't be blind anymore." The paperwork was signed and filed the following week. The house, my cathedral, my proof of a life well lived, now belonged to Pamela, with a life estate provision that allowed me to remain until my death. My will left my liquid assets to Pamela as well, with one small exception. Monica and David would each receive exactly $1, enough to prove I hadn't forgotten them, with a letter explaining why. I told no one, not even Pamela. I wanted to see if anything would change, if Monica and David might somehow surprise me with genuine love and concern. They didn't. 2 weeks ago, I fell. It was stupid, really. I was carrying laundry down the basement stairs, the same stairs I had climbed thousands of times over 45 years, and I missed a step. I tumbled down the entire flight, landing at the bottom with a crack that I knew immediately was very, very bad. My hip was broken in 2 places. I lay on that cold basement floor for 3 hours before the mail carrier noticed my front door was open and called for help. The ambulance took me to Madison General Hospital, where doctors performed emergency surgery to repair the damage. When I woke up from anesthesia, Pamela was there. She was holding my hand, her eyes red from crying, her face drawn with worry.
"Mom."
"Oh, thank God. You're awake." "Pamela." My voice was raspy, my throat raw from the breathing tube. "How long?" "Surgery was 6 hours ago. They said it went well, but you're going to need a lot of recovery time.
"Physical therapy."
Maybe some in-home care for a while." She squeezed my hand. "Don't worry about any of that. Roberto and I have already talked about it. You can stay with us, or we can move in with you, whatever you need. Your apartment is too small. Then we'll move in with you. Mom, I don't care about the logistics. I care about you. I almost lost you." Her voice broke. "I can't lose you too. Not after Dad." I felt tears welling up again, but this time they were tears of gratitude. This was what family was supposed to be. This was the love I had poured into my children for decades, finally reflected back at me. "Where are Monica and David?"
I asked.
Pamela's expression flickered. They're coming. Monica said she had a meeting she couldn't reschedule, but she'll be here tomorrow. David said the kids have a recital, but he'll try to come this weekend." A meeting. A recital. Their mother was in the hospital with a broken hip after major surgery, and they had meetings and recitals. I see. Mom, don't think about them right now. Just focus on getting better. She stayed with me for hours, talking about small things, Roberto's latest project at the garage, the garden they were planning for their tiny balcony, the nursing shifts she had swapped to be here. She didn't mention the house once. Didn't ask about insurance or medical bills or long-term care costs. She just sat with me, loved me, kept me company through the long hospital night. Monica arrived the next morning, breezing in with an expensive handbag and a perfunctory kiss on my forehead. Mother, you look terrible. I've been so worried. You could have come yesterday. I told you, I had a commitment I couldn't break. You know how it is. She sat down in the chair Pamela had vacated and immediately pulled out her phone. The doctor says you're going to need extensive rehabilitation. Have you thought about what you're going to do? Pamela and Roberto have offered to help. Monica snorted.
Please.
They live in a shoebox. You need professional care, Mother. A proper facility where trained staff can monitor you. I'm not going to a nursing home, Monica. It's not a nursing home. It's a rehabilitation center. Very high-end, very exclusive. I've already looked into it. She showed me a brochure on her phone. Shady Pines. They have excellent ratings. And once you're recovered, you could just stay. They have lovely independent living apartments. You wouldn't have to worry about maintaining that big old house anymore. That big old house is my home. Your father built half of it with his own hands. Dad's been gone for 4 years, Mother. It's time to be practical. Practical. That was the word she used. As if love and loyalty and memory were impractical concepts, obstacles to efficiency. I'll think about it, I said, just to end the conversation. Monica left after an hour, citing another commitment. David called but didn't visit, sending flowers instead, the cheap kind from the hospital gift shop I noticed, not even a proper arrangement. The card said, "Get well soon, David and Sandra," in the florist's handwriting, not his own. 3 days into my hospital stay, I was lying in bed, dozing after physical therapy, when I heard voices in the hallway. The house has to be worth at least $900,000 now. Maybe more with the lot size and the location. That was Monica's voice. Zillow says $875,000, but that's conservative. With the right staging, we could push it over $1 million. David's voice now, eager and calculating. The question is how to handle Mom. Shady Pines has memory care facilities. If she resists, we could claim she's not in her right mind. The fall, the surgery, the anesthesia, it's not a stretch to say she needs supervision. That's a bit extreme, don't you think? Do you have a better idea? She's never going to agree to sell willingly. You know how she is about that house. A long pause. Then Monica spoke again, her voice cold and decisive. She's 72 years old with a broken hip. Let's be realistic, she's never going to be independent again. We put her in Shady Pines, sell the house, and split the money 3 ways. It's the practical decision. What about Pamela? What about her? She's always been Mom's favorite. Let her have the trinkets and photo albums. We get the real assets. And if Mom refuses? She won't be in a position to refuse. Power of attorney, David. We file for it while she's still recovering, claim she's not competent to make decisions for herself. By the time she realizes what's happening, it's done. I lay in that hospital bed, listening to my children plot to steal my home and lock me away, and I felt something inside me harden into diamond. They didn't know I was awake. They didn't know I had called my lawyer 3 months ago. They didn't know that the house they were so eager to steal already belonged to someone else. The next morning, I asked the nurse to help me make a phone call. "Gregory? It's Eleanor. I need you to come to the hospital. And bring the documents. All of them." Gregory arrived that afternoon, briefcase in hand, just as Monica and David were concluding what they probably thought was a compassionate visit. "Mother, who is this?" Monica asked, eyeing Gregory with suspicion. "This is my attorney, Gregory Walsh. You remember him. He handled your father's estate." "Why is he here?" "Because I have some things to say, and I want them witnessed by legal counsel." I pressed the button to raise my bed, wincing at the pain in my hip, but determined to face them sitting up. Please close the door. David glanced at Monica uncertainly, but they both complied. I heard you yesterday, I said without preamble. In the hallway. Discussing how to put me in a nursing home and sell my house. Discussing power of attorney. Discussing how to split the money 3 ways and leave Pamela with trinkets and photo albums. Monica's face went white. David's jaw dropped. Mother, that's not. Don't. My voice was sharp enough to cut glass. Don't insult me by pretending. I know exactly what you said. I know exactly what you were planning. And I want you to know something in return. Gregory stepped forward and handed me a folder. I opened it and pulled out the first document. This is a copy of the deed to my house. Notice the date, 3 months ago. Notice the name on the deed, Pamela Blackwood Reyes. The house no longer belongs to me. It belongs to your sister, with a life estate provision that allows me to live there until my death. Monica snatched the document, her eyes scanning it frantically. This can't be legal. You transferred the house without telling us. I wasn't aware I needed your permission to dispose of my own property. But that's our inheritance. No, Monica. It was never your inheritance. It was my house. Mine and your father's. We built it with our own hands, paid for it with our own labor, and we have the right to leave it to whoever we choose. This is undue influence, David sputtered. Pamela must have manipulated you. Pamela doesn't know. I let that sink in. She has no idea the house is in her name. I did this myself, of my own free will, because I knew that the moment I became vulnerable, you two would swoop in like vultures. Gregory cleared his throat. For the record, Mrs. Blackwood underwent a complete psychological evaluation before signing these documents. I have certification from 2 independent psychiatrists that she was of sound mind and acting without coercion. Any attempt to contest this transfer on grounds of diminished capacity will fail. Monica's face had gone from white to red. You can't do this. We're your children. Yes, you are. And let me tell you what that has meant to me over the past 30 years. I pulled out another document, my personal records, the accounting I had kept of every dollar I had given them. Monica, do you know how much money your father and I gave you over the years? Between college expenses, wedding costs, loans that were never repaid, and various emergencies? $187,000. David, your total is $213,000. That's $400,000 between the two of you. Money that should have been our retirement security. Money that we gave you because we loved you, because we wanted to help, because we believed you would remember that generosity and return it with love. I set down the document. But you didn't return it with love. You returned it with entitlement, with resentment, with schemes to lock me away and steal what remains. You came to this hospital not to comfort your mother, but to calculate the value of her assets. That's not fair. Fair? You want to talk about fair? I laughed bitterly. Fair is Pamela, who never asked us for a dime, calling every Sunday just to hear my voice. Fair is Pamela and Roberto offering to move into my house to care for me, not because they want something, but because they love me. Fair is watching your sister drive a 10-year-old car and live in a small apartment because she has integrity while you two drive luxury vehicles and live in houses you can't afford, funded by money you extracted from your parents through guilt and manipulation. David had the decency to look ashamed. Monica just looked furious. You'll regret this, Monica said, her voice low and threatening. When you're old and alone and need help, don't come crying to us. I won't need to. Because, unlike you, Pamela actually loves me. I held up one more document. This is my updated will. Pamela receives my remaining assets, which are considerable despite your best efforts to drain them. You and David each receive $1, along with a letter explaining exactly why. You can't. It's already done. Filed. Witnessed and ironclad. If you contest it, you'll lose, and you'll spend a fortune in legal fees in the process. Gregory has made sure of that. Monica stood there, shaking with rage, searching for some argument, some angle, some way to salvage the inheritance she had always assumed was hers. "Get out," I said quietly. "Both of you. Get out of my hospital room and don't come back." "Mother," I said, "get out." They left. Monica stormed out without a backward glance. David hesitated at the door, something like regret flickering across his face, but in the end, he followed his sister without a word. Gregory sat down in the chair beside my bed. "Are you all right, Eleanor?" I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of 72 years pressing down on me.
"No."
"But I will be." Pamela arrived that evening, confused and concerned after receiving a cryptic message from Monica accusing her of manipulating me. "Mom, what's going on?" "Monica is saying terrible things. She says you cut them out of the will, that you gave me the house." "Sit down, sweetheart." I told her everything. The recordings in the hallway. The years of financial exploitation. The decision I had made 3 months ago to protect what was left of my estate from children who saw me as a burden to be managed rather than a mother to be loved. By the time I finished, Pamela was crying.
"Mom, I don't want the house."
"I don't want the money. I just want you." "I know, baby. That's exactly why you're getting both." But Monica and David have already received far more than their share. They just never bothered to count it because they always expected more. I took her hand. "You are the only one of my children who loved me for who I am, not for what I could give you. You're the only one who showed up when it mattered, who cared about my well-being instead of my possessions. You deserve everything I have to give." Pamela shook her head, still crying. "I never wanted to compete with them. I never wanted to be the favorite." "You weren't competing. That's the whole point." Monica and David were so busy calculating their inheritance that they forgot to have a relationship with me. "You just loved me." "That's not favoritism, Pamela. That's consequence. Actions have consequences, and the consequence of loving someone is being loved in return." We sat together for a long time, mother and daughter, grieving what had been lost and accepting what remained. My recovery took 3 months. True to her word, Pamela and Roberto moved into my house to help with my rehabilitation. They converted the first-floor study into a bedroom so I wouldn't have to navigate stairs, installed grab bars in the bathroom, and rearranged the furniture to accommodate my walker and then my cane. Roberto fixed all the small things Harold had never gotten around to: the leaky faucet, the squeaky door, the loose banister on the porch. Pamela cooked meals that reminded me of my own mother's kitchen, simple and nourishing, made with love rather than obligation. We fell into a rhythm, the 3 of us. Morning coffee on the porch. Evening walks around the garden. Sunday dinners where we talked about everything and nothing, where laughter came easily and silence was comfortable. I didn't hear from Monica or David. Not a call. Not a card. Not even a text message. They had written me off entirely, apparently deciding that a mother who wouldn't give them what they wanted wasn't worth the effort of maintaining a relationship. It hurt. I won't pretend it didn't. These were children I had carried in my body, nursed to my breast, worried over through childhood illnesses and teenage rebellions. I had loved them completely, even when that love was not returned. And their total abandonment, their willingness to cut me out of their lives simply because I had protected myself from their greed, was a wound that would never fully heal. But the hurt was mixed with something else. Relief.
Peace.
The knowledge that I no longer had to perform for people who only valued me for my assets. I could simply be Eleanor, mother, grandmother, woman, without constantly wondering what was expected of me. 6 months after my fall, I was strong enough to walk without assistance. Pamela and Roberto had started looking for a small house nearby, not wanting to leave, but not wanting to crowd me either. "Stay," I told them one evening. "This house is too big for one person. Your father always wanted it to be full of family. Make it full." "Mom, are you sure?" "I've never been more sure of anything. Besides," I smiled, "it's your house now. Legally, I'm the guest." Pamela laughed and hugged me. "You'll never be a guest, Mom. This is your home. It will always be your home." They moved in permanently. Roberto started a small vegetable garden in the backyard, in the same spot where Harold's roses had once bloomed. Pamela converted one of the upstairs bedrooms into a nursery. She was pregnant, 3 months along, a grandchild I would actually get to know and love. 1 year after my fall, I received a letter. It was from David. Handwritten, which surprised me. He hadn't written anything by hand since grade school. Dear Mom, I don't expect you to read this. I don't expect you to respond. But I need to write it anyway.
I'm sorry.
I've spent the last year thinking about what happened at the hospital. At first, I was angry. I thought you were being unfair, that you had let Pamela manipulate you, that we were being punished for things that weren't our fault. But then Sandra left me. She said I was never satisfied, always chasing more, always measuring my worth by money and status instead of by the relationships that actually mattered. She said watching how I treated you made her realize she didn't want to spend her life with someone who could discard his own mother so easily. She was right. I've been in therapy for 6 months now. I'm trying to understand why I became someone who could stand outside his mother's hospital room and calculate the value of her house. I don't have all the answers yet, but I'm starting to see the patterns. The fear of poverty you taught us about, twisted into a fear of not having enough that made me grasp for everything I could get. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not asking for money. I'm not asking for anything except the chance to tell you that I see what I did wrong, and I'm trying to be better. I hope you're healthy. I hope you're happy. I hope Pamela is taking good care of you. Your son, David. I read the letter 3 times before I set it down. Part of me wanted to crumple it up, to dismiss it as another manipulation, another attempt to worm his way back into my good graces. But another part of me, the part that would always be his mother, recognized something genuine in those words.
Shame. Growth.
The first tentative steps toward becoming a better person. I didn't respond immediately. I needed time to think, to decide whether I could trust this apparent transformation. 3 months later, I invited David to lunch. It was awkward at first. We sat across from each other at a small restaurant, neither of us quite knowing what to say. He looked older, I noticed. Thinner. The expensive watch was gone, replaced by something simple and functional. Thank you for seeing me, he said finally. I didn't think you would. I almost didn't. I understand. He took a deep breath. Mom, I know words aren't enough. I know I can't undo what I did. But I want you to know that I'm trying. I'm trying to be the son you deserved, even if it's 30 years too late. What about Monica? His face clouded. Monica, and I don't speak much anymore. She's not ready to hear what I've learned. She still thinks you were wrong, that Pamela manipulated everything, that we were cheated out of our rightful inheritance. And what do you think? I think we cheated ourselves. I think we were so focused on what we could get from you that we forgot to appreciate what you had already given us. A childhood full of love. Parents who sacrificed everything for our futures. A home that should have been filled with gratitude instead of calculation. He looked down at his hands. I think we broke your heart, Mom. And I don't know if that can ever be fixed. I reached across the table and took his hand. Hearts are resilient, David. They can heal from almost anything. It just takes time and honesty and the willingness to do the work. He looked up at me, his eyes wet. Does that mean? It means I'm willing to try. One lunch at a time. One honest conversation at a time. No promises, no guarantees. But the door is open if you're willing to walk through it. He squeezed my hand. I am. I promise I am. We've been meeting for lunch every month since then. The conversations are still sometimes difficult, still sometimes painful. But there's progress. Slow, tentative, fragile progress towards something that might someday feel like family again. Monica never reached out. I heard through David that she had divorced Theodore after a financial scandal destroyed his career. She was living in a smaller house now, struggling to maintain the lifestyle she had always felt entitled to. Part of me felt sorry for her. Most of me felt nothing at all. Last week, Pamela gave birth to a beautiful baby girl. They named her Ruth Eleanor, after my mother and after me. I held her in the hospital, this tiny, perfect creature, and I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Uncomplicated joy. She's beautiful, I whispered. She has your eyes, Pamela said.
Dad's chin.
Roberto's nose. Poor child. We laughed together, 3 generations of Blackwood women and the future stretching out before us. Later, after Pamela was resting and Roberto had gone for coffee, I sat alone with my granddaughter in my arms. She stared up at me with those ancient newborn eyes, seeing everything and nothing. Let me tell you a story, little one, I murmured, about a house that started as a dream and became a battleground and, finally, a home again. About a family that lost its way and had to find a new path. About your great-grandfather Harold, who built these walls with his own hands, and your grandmother Pamela, who filled them with love. Ruth Eleanor blinked at me, uncomprehending but attentive. The lesson of this story, I continued, is simple. Love is not a transaction. It's not something you give in expectation of return. It's something you give because the giving itself is the reward. Your mother understood that. Your great-grandmother understood that. And I hope, when you're old enough to understand, you'll know it too. She yawned, tiny and perfect, and closed her eyes. I looked around the hospital room, at the flowers from Roberto, the cards from neighbors, the photos Pamela had already hung on the wall. I thought about the long journey that had brought me here, the poverty, the work, the sacrifice, the betrayal, the healing. And I realized something important. The house had never been the point. The house was just wood and nails, brick and mortar. What mattered was what happened inside it. The love that grew there. The memories that accumulated. The family that it sheltered, through good times and bad. Monica and David had wanted the house because they thought it represented wealth, security, status. But the real treasure was something they had discarded long ago. The relationships that made a house a home. Pamela understood that.
She had always understood that.
And now, watching her sleep with her newborn daughter, I knew that the Blackwood legacy would continue, not through the house or the money, but through the love that passed from generation to generation. My daughter once said, "Just put Mom in a home and split the money." She didn't know I was listening. She didn't know I had already called my lawyer. But most importantly, she didn't know that she had already lost the only inheritance that ever truly mattered, a mother who loved her and who would have given her anything, if only she had thought to ask with love instead of calculation. Some inheritances can be measured in dollars and property. The ones that matter are measured in Sunday phone calls, hospital vigils, and grandchildren named after the women who came before. I am 73 years old now. I have a broken hip that still aches on rainy days, a house full of family, and a heart that has learned the difference between people who love you and people who love what you can give them. It took me too long to learn that lesson, but I learned it in time to pass it on. And in the end, that's the only inheritance that matters.